The Crusaders were putting the Turks to the sword. They spared none of the Gentiles on the grounds of age or sex until the earth was covered with blood and the corpses of the slaughtered, many of them also the killed and lifeless bodies of Christians, Gauls, as well as the Greeks, Syrians and Armenians mixed together. There were 10,000 killed. Those bodies lay all over the quarters and streets of the town and had been killed by the Gauls' weapons. As we learned in the previous episode of the Crusade, the First Crusade was a resounding success for the Christian Crusaders. After a bloody campaign to the Levant, they had achieved the impossible by taking over the city of Jerusalem from the Muslims in 1099. After the Battle of Ascalon, where they repelled the Egyptian relief army, they founded 4 Latin states: the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the Principality of Antioch, and the counties of Edessa and Tripoli. The victory of the Crusaders was short-lived, however. Confronted by the Turks on one side and the Byzantines on the other, the Crusaders were in a state of almost permanent war and isolation. At the same time, many pilgrims had decided to return to Europe after the Crusade, satisfied to have fulfilled their oaths and pressed to find their lands and their families. On top of that, the Norman Principality of Antioch was involved in constant struggles with the Byzantine Empire until it came under Byzantine supremacy in 1138. The disunity of the Crusader states and their resulting weakness was used by Emir Imad ad-Din Zengi in 1144 to conquer Edessa and either kill or drive out all of the Franks in the city. This first crushing blow to a Crusader state left the remaining Crusader states in distress and, at the same time, increased the Muslims' will to fight. Upon hearing the news, Pope Eugene III issued the papal bull Quantum Predecessores on December 1st, 1145, calling for a new crusade. The King of France, Louis VII, had already made plans of his own to launch a crusade, however, prompting the preacher Bernard of Clairvaux to spread the word through France and Germany, where King Conrad III of the Holy Roman Empire was to be convinced to join as well. Bernard thought that it was essential that Conrad III of the Holy Roman Empire should accompany King Louis VII to the Holy Land. However, King Conrad III was an old man in his 50s, in poor health, and unable to survive the tough journey. In fact, he felt that he was already pulling his weight in the Holy War by fighting the pagan Slavs and Wends in Eastern Europe, and by defending the Pope in Italy against King Roger II of Sicily. That would not do for a determined Bernard, however. On Christmas Day, and again 2 days later, he confronted Conrad III in the midst of a large crowd with his responsibility as a king of Christians and his duty to the Christian faith. The king burst into tears, and finally made the Crusader vow. With all the forces gathered, the crusading forces departed in May 1147. Conrad III left from Regensburg, journeying through Eastern Europe, while Louis VII followed from Paris about a week later. At the same time, a steadily growing fleet of crusaders from Normandy, Flanders, England, and the Rhinelands gathered off the coast of southern England in the Bay of Dartmouth. They chose the sea route over the land route of the main armies, taking some 180 ships of all sizes southward. Instead of completing the Iberian Peninsula, the Armada stopped in Portugal. Their arrival was more than welcome for King Alfonso Henriques, who had just recently proclaimed Portugal an independent kingdom in 1139. He wanted to conquer Lisbon, the beautiful city on the Tagus. He lured his allies with the promise that they could plunder the city for 3 days. The fighting lasted all summer, and the Moors did not surrender until October 24, 1147, when the fall of the city was only a matter of a few days or even hours. The Crusaders received the promised loot and made themselves comfortable in Portugal all throughout the winter. Many, in fact, decided to stay there. Some of them considered their Crusader promise to be fulfilled and returned home. The others sailed on to the Levant. Only a fraction of the original troops continued the journey to Jerusalem after the victory. Meanwhile, the French and German Crusader armies each made their own way to the Levant, with many of the German Crusaders turning to the Slavic Wends in the northeastern part of the Holy Roman Empire. The rest of the German Crusader army arrived in Constantinople several weeks before the French. Instead of waiting for the French contingents, Conrad's troops quickly pressed further into Asia Minor. They crossed the Bosphorus and divided in half at Nicaea for logistical reasons. The unarmed participants of the Crusade chose a route along the coast of Asia Minor, while Conrad and his troops traveled directly through Asia Minor. Conrad's army was quickly involved in fighting with the Seljuk Turks, culminating in a heavy defeat for the Crusaders in October 1147 at Dorylaeum. Conrad fled with his remaining troops to Nicaea, while many of the Crusaders who traveled along the coast were killed at the beginning of 1148 and subsequently fled to meet the incoming French army. The French army met with the survivors of the Germanic army at Nicaea. To avoid having to cross the deserts of Anatolia like the German army, Louis chose a longer route. However, when they reached Laodicea, they were quickly attacked by the Seljuk Turks, where they suffered heavy losses. The remaining French troops fought their way through to the city of Attaleia, from where they pressed on to Antioch. Conrad had meanwhile recovered, and in March 1148 took the sea route to Palestine. In June 1148, Conrad met with Louis in Aachen, where they discussed their next course of action. Both armies had been thinned out considerably, making Edessa an uninviting target. Joined by King Baldwin III of Jerusalem, Conrad and Louis decided to attack Damascus. Although the city remained neutral to the Crusader states and was one of the opponents of Nur ad-Din, the city was within reach and offered a worthwhile destination given its wealth. Disregarding previously made agreements, the siege began in July 1148. Faced with the Christian threat, the rulers of the city decided to set aside their differences and ask their former enemy, Nur ad-Din, for help. When the Emir approached with a relief army, the Crusaders, already weakened by water shortages and disagreements between the commanders, had to call off the siege in just a few days. Just like that, the Second Crusade ended with a whimper. Conrad and Louis returned to the safety of their homelands, while Baldwin was left to fend for himself in Jerusalem. The ill-considered attack on Damascus led to more and more Muslims uniting and attacking the Crusader states, while on the Christian side it became increasingly clear that the true intentions of many Crusaders could not align with the universal idea of the Crusades. All in all, the Second Crusade proved to be a complete debacle. The reputation of the Crusades, meanwhile, had suffered greatly, and the entire Crusade movement was at the center of criticism. Public opinion in Europe fluctuated between horror and disbelief over the catastrophic failure of the Crusade. Far more dangerous than the public opinion in the West, however, were the immediate political consequences for the Crusader states. The events of 1148 meant a massive setback for them. From that time on, the situation of the Latins in the East deteriorated rapidly. It would eventually take the fall of the holy city of Jerusalem for the Christians to properly take up the cause once more. Hello friends, and a happy new year to you all! It's been a while since my last video due to some unforeseen complications as of late, but I have plenty more videos planned for the future ahead. Given the popularity of some of my videos, Nazis, I might focus a bit more on other projects than pixel history videos, but they will surely appear every now and again. As always, feel free to drop me a comment about what you would like to see covered next, or any other kind words to keep the channel going. As always, any support is very much appreciated. Here's to a healthy and joyful new year. I bid you all adieu, and a lovely day.